Evening. For those of you online and for those of you here. Get to put these on. My name is Joanne Harris and I'm acting chair here at the Southwest Harbor Public Library. The community's living room is how we like to think of ourselves. I just want to mention program next week at this time before I introduce our speaker tonight. It will be a virtual program about local writer, photographer, and activist for sure, LaRue Spiker. And those of you who've been around here for a while, you know she was a force to be reckoned with for sure. So that should be a wonderful talk with Jenna Jandro. And that's in collaboration with the Mount Desert Historical Society. So make sure to have your calendars for that one. For our online audience, Kate Pickup will help facilitate questions at the end of the talk. And be sure to use your chat feature to ask questions. So without further ado, let me introduce Martha Tod Dudman to you. Martha was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and grew up in Washington, D.C. That's just for Martha's benefit. There we go. That was she attended Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio, and moved to Maine in 1975. First to Little Cranberry Island, lucky her, then to Northeast Harbor, just down the road from Acadia National Park, where she raised her son and daughter and still lives today. After serving as president and general manager of a group of radio stations in Ellsworth and Bangor, specifically WDEA, WWMJ, and WEZQ, Martha worked with Gary Friedman and Associates as a professional fundraising consultant, helping raise millions of dollars for Maine nonprofits. She serves on the board of the Maine Humanities Council and is a selectman for the town of Mount Desert. When she's not doing that, she makes it a habit and a goal to climb every one of our mountains here on the island twice each summer, and she only has 5 more to go for this year. Martha has published 5 books. Her memoir, Augusta Gone, was released as an award-winning Lifetime television movie in 2006. Today, she will talk about her new novel, Sunrise and the Real World. Please welcome warmly my friend and author, Martha Tod Dudman.
Thank you for coming. It's nice of you to come inside on this gorgeous day. I feel like I'm far away from you. Maybe I'm gonna shift this a little. It's especially nice to see some old friends I don't get to see very often. I feel so lucky to live in a place where people like books and will come out at night to hear about them. This latest novel takes place on Mount Desert Island and Ellsworth in the late 1970s. And some of you may recognize some of the places, but I want to emphasize that it's fiction. It's the story of Lorraine, a young woman living in Northeast Harbor who goes to work at Sunrise Academy, a treatment center for troubled teens. She thought she knew Maine, but really she knew coastal Maine. She knew about lighthouses and bellbuoys and lobster boats in the harbor, but she had never ventured much beyond the Trenton Bridge. And she had never encountered kids like the ones she met at Sunrise Academy, many of whom were raised in poverty and squalor and had troubled, terrible childhoods. At first, she was afraid of them. The first day on the job, I got 27 black fly bites. I was beginning to wonder why I'd ever taken the job. While the other counselors seemed comfortable here, I was scared of the students and their horrendous histories. They'd been in trouble with the law, kicked out of school, shunted from one foster home to another, caught stealing cars. Most were wards of the state sent there by the courts. Sunrise was the last-ditch attempt to salvage them before they were sent to the Maine Youth Center, which was really a jail for kids. The kids all seemed dangerous that first day. Alien. They came from some other universe. Not the universe I'd come from, which seemed tidy and calm in comparison. Their world was crazy and jumbled, full of poverty and drunken parents. These kids didn't act like people I knew, didn't talk like people I knew. They were from some other Maine. But after a while, she gradually realizes that she has more in common with these kids than she thought. Maybe she isn't so different from them after all. Lorraine has her own secret history and her own difficult childhood, which still haunts her. I don't usually read this next part. I prefer when I'm amusing, but I feel very at home here in this library. I've been using it since I was a kid. And I wanted to read something that I think explains the kinship that Lorraine felt for these kids at Sunrise and why she connects with them in the book and why they terrify her. This is Lorraine. My mother's rages seemed wordless, boundless, erupting from across the room, while I cowered by the closet door, 8 years old, turning my face away. My mother opened my bureau drawers, discovered my collection, foreign coins my father had brought back from other countries, Tunisia, Siam, Vietnam. I put them in little envelopes and marked them carefully. There were special sticks and rocks I'd found in the yard and a rusty key I dug up in the bamboo patch in back of the Haviland's house, all carefully labeled. "What's this?" she roared, pulling these precious objects out of the drawer, disgusted, throwing them down on the floor, hurling them in my direction. My mother's face both appalled and fascinated me. It was the face from a nightmare. Her roar was compelling. I got lost in it. "That's my hobbies," I told her weakly, trying to placate the raging beast. "Your hobby is making a mess," my mother hollered. "Your hobby is chaos." She herself was chaos. She was a mother of chaos. And she threw it all: torn envelopes, sticks, stones, rocks, dolls, old rusty key, anything she could find in the cluttered drawers, anything she could get her hands on. Later, I was sore and quiet. I had spent the afternoon cleaning my room as instructed. My mother subsided downstairs. She was in the kitchen. I could feel her presence down there. Maybe she was boiling fruit to make jam in the steamy kitchen, the air thick with the smell of boiling fruit and sugar. That sweet, thick vapor rising up and her big stained spoon. Maybe she was ironing with her dangerous iron. The ironing board made a certain squealing creak when she unfolded it. Then she set it down hard on the kitchen floor. Another noise that I recognized. I could track her movements downstairs. Eventually, Lorraine grows very fond of the children, and she starts to feel like they're kind of her family. And then a horrific event takes place that changes everything. We've all experienced something or witnessed something that completely upends our lives. You think you're never going to forget it, that everything after that event will be before and after. And you never do forget it, but it gets blunted after a while. And you stop thinking about it all the time. But it's always there in the back of your mind. And years later, something happens and it all comes back in a rush. Lorraine eventually leaves Sunrise and she goes on with her life. She gets married, she has a daughter, she gets divorced, and she starts a career as a journalist working for the Ellsworth American. But her life never really works out. And it's always there in the back of her mind, the story about what happened at Sunrise. It's the stone in her shoe. Finally, years later, she decides to write about it. And she goes to a writers and artists colony in Virginia, far out in the country, in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. The sun's not up, but I've been awake since 3 a.m., alone in my tiny room. Might as well get up. The room is chilly. I pull on my clothes in a hurry, then go out into the dimly lit hallway, a long corridor of closed doors where other residents, painters and poets and novelists are dreaming their dreams. I hear them sigh in their sleep as I pass, and then I am out the door and into the cold air of the early morning. The moon's nearly full, lighting the broad dirt path. My studio is far at the back, beyond all the others, and I have to cross the damp grass where it's darker to get to my studio door. Every time that I come out early like this and alone, I'm afraid that somebody's waiting in there, sitting where I won't see him until I put on the light. There's no one there this morning, of course. Just a room with a glaring, unflattering light, a desk, a daybed, a chair, the bare bones of creation provided to every resident at Caledonia, the artist colony where I'm staying. I sit down at the desk and open my laptop, dive in, as I have every day since I came here to Caledonia. I'm trying to get the story right, at least on the page. Trying to explain what happened 30 years ago when I worked at Sunrise Academy. Begin with the body, my friend Alan always tells me. But somehow that doesn't seem right. I should start where it all began and zigzag my way through the wilderness of events, like I'm following a path through the trees. Begin at Sunrise Academy, after the bodies were discovered, after the shouting was over, by the lake on a hot summer day. You realize, don't you, that nothing's ever going to be the same, Elliot asked me. He was standing quite close to me, but I didn't touch him. I didn't want to, not after what happened. We're never going back to the way it was, he said. He was right, we never did. All the violence and near violence had erased everything else at Sunrise Academy. All memory of how things used to be. And I was an entirely different person from the naive young girl who'd come down that dirt driveway a year ago. Writing a book is not easy. Have any of you ever tried to write a book? You? No? Well, good. I was going to say, then you understand, but you don't. Anyway, you get discouraged. I got really discouraged with this book. I started it more than 10 years ago. And then I wasn't right. I couldn't get it right. And I put it away. Then I got it back out. Then I put it away. And finally, I decided I needed an outside opinion. So I asked my friend David, a close friend, old friend, who's an English professor, knows what he's talking about, good poet, wonderful guy, if he would read it for me and give me some tips. And I don't think he really understood what I wanted from him. What I wanted, what every writer wants, was praise. I wanted him to say, Martha, this book is amazing. It's so good. Don't do anything else to it. But that's not what I got from him. What I got from, he hated it. He told me it was terrible. He tore it to shreds. And I kept saying, that's not, don't. And he kept going, telling me more bad things about it. It made me feel horrible. I came back to Maine. I was so discouraged. I kind of limped home, and I was certain I would never finish it. And life at that time, as it often does, conveniently intervened, I should say. I was working as a professional fundraising consultant, as Joe mentioned. I was taking care of my aging parents. And so I was very distracted, and I welcomed these distractions because I didn't have to think about the book, but it was always there in the back of my mind. Well, eventually I retired and my parents died. And suddenly, for the first time in years, I had time. And something happens when your parents die. You realize you're next and you're on a deadline, so to speak. And anything you really want to do, you better get cracking. And so I started writing again, a different novel this time, completely different. It was a lot of fun, but I kept thinking about this one. Well, in January of 2020, I was down in Washington at a funeral of an old friend, and I had dinner with a high school friend of mine, old high school friend, Mary Sherman. And she's also a writer, and she asked me, what are you working on? And I said, well, I've got this new novel I'm really excited about. It's so much fun, blah, blah, blah. And I said, but there's this other one. But I showed it to my friend. She said, tell me about it. I said, I showed it to my friend David. He hated it. And she said, Dorothy, you showed it to a man? He said, are you nuts? That's your problem. Finish the book. So I came home to Maine, determined to finish it. And then 2020, to my delight, COVID happened. Nothing to do but write, right? Write and walk and write. So I did. I had started writing the book in the third person. So it was, she did this, she, Lorraine. But I switched to first person because I'm actually more comfortable in the first person. I've written a lot of memoir and I write a journal, so I feel like it's like you're inside the character. It's like being John Malkovich, the movie with the camera in the forehead, moving through, kind of. And it's easier to inhabit the moment. It was not always so comfortable to be Lorraine, however. She is an uncomfortable character. She acts irrationally. She's very conflicted. She's torn between this side of her that's sort of magical and likes to be in the woods and has this fairy tale life on the island, which is her best self. And then this grittier, violent side of her, which was the world of Sunrise, and reflects her own darkest impulses and her own secret history. She's not completely likable, but I hope you can't help liking her a little and find her somewhat endearing. She's just trying to find her way through a difficult world, like all of us. She's thrown off kilter by terrible events, hampered by her own history, as we all are. She's doing the best she can, though sometimes she gets it wrong. Very wrong. Very, very wrong. I started writing the book using made-up places. So there was a Salt Harbor, Clinton, Chester. There probably are Chester and Clinton, Maine, but I made them up. And then as I was working, and I thought, what the hell? People are always writing about real places. They write about New York till they're blue in the face. They're sashaying down Madison Avenue, hanging out in East Village, taking the subway out to Brooklyn. Why not write about places I know? So what will we do without the Cheese House, the Pine Tree Market, the Thai restaurant that used to be on Main Street in Ellsworth, the Green Moth? Remember that? With the moth in the cage? So I wanted those places, the real places. And if you read this book, or if you've read this book, you'll encounter real places. And you may recognize or think you recognize real people. But remember, I am not Lorraine, and this is a work of fiction. But still, it's kind of fun to visit places you know, isn't it? And I'll close with a place you may know. I went across the road and up the steep, uneven stone steps toward Thuya Garden, a public garden once part of a private estate. I'd slept badly the night before and my thoughts were muddy. The walk would make me feel better. Behind me, the harbor was full of its summertime fleet. I stopped at the little pavilion that, years later, my own daughter would name the House of the Swans because of the graceful curve in the wooden railing. I could hear the little stream just up the path and the cars going by below on the road. The morning air was cool. The mailboat was coming into the harbor from the Cranberry Isles, gray and white against the green water. Beyond the pier lay a clutter of trees and houses that was the village of Northeast Harbor, where I lived. This was what was real, I thought, sitting there. This and Jake. Nothing could touch me here. No clever, seductive psychologist, no burly girl with pale eyes, nothing. As long as I could summon this perfect place, remember this moment, I'd always be safe. I got up and continued over the stream and across that one big open rock to the broad path of sandy pink gravel, carefully raked and groomed. No other visitors had come yet that morning, and the marks of the rake were still distinct on the path. In some places, circles, other places, straight lines, as if the path had been combed. The little museum was already open, and one of the lady volunteers was sitting in the cool shadows by the unlit fireplace. Maybe she was reading a book, maybe knitting. Maybe she could smell the faint, cool odor of ashes in the unlit hearth. Years later, I would know the woman who worked there. She would be a friend or a friend of a friend. And she would be my age. And then eventually, the woman in there would be younger. That's how things are in a little town or anywhere you live for a long time. The garden was quiet and magical. Nobody there but one gardener at the other end of the flower bed. There was dew on the grass and my sneakers got wet as I crossed the lawn. I passed the small frog pond with grassy banks and went to the wishing well. I had brought 2 bright pennies, one for my wish and one to leave behind for the person who came next. After I made my secret wish, I went to the back gate with a wooden sign. Through this gate to Elliott Mountain Trails. I opened the door to what lay beyond. Narnia. A narrow path with trees on either side, a leafy pool. As I disappeared into the forest, the gate swung shut behind me and the garden was gone. Thank you.
Anyone? Yes,
Any questions online?
not yet,
Not yet?
not yet.
Any questions here?
I have one.
Yes, please.
So Martha, when you, oh, do I have to do this?
Well, then
You
you
do,
do.
you have to.
Okay, got it.
I had to do it, you have.
I've never done this, I've never done this before, but it's not that big of a deal, is it?
No.
When you're writing, do you have a beginning, middle, and end? Do you have a sense of the whole thing, or does it just evolve? Or
No.
devolve? Or
Whenever I've had the whole thing in my head, it's never worked out. It's more like you're following a path and you don't know what's coming. I mean, when you rewrite it, you kind of know what's coming, but then you have to shift things. But no, I don't usually know where I'm going when I start out, and it surprises me.
But you've got to have some sense of what you want to write about.
No.
No, okay.
It would be so boring.
I would be so
already knew.
boring.
Yeah.
I'd like to know, after Mary Sherman said, go home and write, and then COVID found you and you found COVID. How did you meet the book at that point?
How did I what?
How did you meet Lorraine, and how did you meet?
Well, I mean, I'd written it a lot. I'd written a lot. It was originally about twice this long. So there was a lot of writing there. So a lot of it was pruning. But I think that was the stage, that was when I changed from third person to first. And started using real places. And the ending came much later. Yeah, it was I just had renewed energy for it.
And did you find yourself in less turmoil around sitting with her?
Well, she's an uncomfortable person, but I think my turmoil was more self-doubt about my writing itself. And I guess I had reached the point, I think, as I said, my parents were gone, I was retired, I was older. It was COVID. I kind of felt freed to just write whatever I wrote. It was good.
Thank you. I did try, Martha, trying to write a hybrid memoir and I quit.
It's hard. It's hard. It takes a lot of work. She also
It
does
doesn't
not
bite,
like
it
it.
doesn't bite.
Yeah.
Chocolate vanilla swirl. I'd love to hear you talk about your process from, you mentioned that you journal. And where do you write? Where are your, what do you write on? What do you write with?
Oh, well, I have a desk downstairs in a room that's just for work. It's very nice. And I get up first thing in the morning and I go to my desk and I write. I write in my journal every day since I was about 7. So I have a lot of them. And I work, that just sort of gets me going. I answer my emails, you know, I do stuff like that. Then I go for a walk. And then I come back and I do my work. And I try to work at least 5 days a week. When I'm really on something or really working hard, I'll work 6 or 7 days a week. I try to work in the morning. I try to have my phone turned off and not have any distractions or commitments at that time. It doesn't always work out, you know, I'm on some boards and I have to do things, but that's, and then if I'm writing the first draft of something, I'm beginning something new or working on something that's new, I write 10 pages a day. Type it. I'm very fast. And the rule is I can't think about it too much. I can't, if I have to keep going, I have to do 10 pages. It's not how long I work, it's how much I get done, 10 pages. And I just have to get those 10 pages done. And even if what I'm writing is, I don't know what I'm supposed to be writing, and then I get back to the subject because I was bored with myself and I get back on track. And then I can always clean it up. I tell myself, you can always clean it up. And then after I finish something, I put it away for a while, sometimes months. I've got one thing I was working on for a while. I haven't looked at it in a couple of years. It just needs to sit. You need to get some distance from it. And then you can be a little more ruthless because you're not as connected to it. And it seems new to you, kind of. So, but I rewrite a lot. I do a lot of rewriting, revision. Cutting. Yes.
As a man, I would be remiss if I didn't thank you for this wonderful talk.
No offense.
I don't take it. I'm fascinated that you went from third to first person. That must have required some dramatic change in the way you approached it, but it doesn't appear that it did.
No, in fact, one of David's not his real name. One of David's arguments with me was that he said it felt like I was too close to the protagonist. So, no, it was a pretty smooth transition. It wasn't hard. I mean, you can't describe the person as well if you're talking about if you're I, you know, you just have to assume people kind of know what you look like. But I don't describe people a lot anyway.
One other quick one. It's fiction, but along the way, did you find yourself drawing on your experiences in your life or the experiences of other friends you've had that
Sure.
found its way into the book?
Every author does that, I believe, every fiction writer. You use bits and pieces from your life, things you've observed, things you've experienced, people you've known, places you've been, you draw on those things. What I found is the things that start out as most directly drawn from my life are the ones that I drop. And the things that I made up completely, the scenes that didn't happen ever in any lifetime, those are the ones that feel the most real, which is odd. But I once went to a talk that Joyce Carol Oates gave, and somebody asked her that similar question. And she said, she's very tiny, and she has this feathery little voice, and she said, well, you know, it's kind of, she looked like a little bird. She said, it's kind of like building a nest, you know, a nest, and you weave in little bits and pieces from your life. And I think that's true. It's like a nest, like an osprey nest.
So I'm wondering how much the book has changed since what David read originally, and has he read it again? Had any thoughts?
Well, you know, I really like him. He and his wife are very close friends of mine. But I must say, he did read it. He didn't say anything about it, which I thought was kind of rude. I mean, just fake it, right? Oh, I read you, don't just say I read your book. That's so rude. You know, he's a writer. You know, you say, I read your book, you know, you've really fixed it. It's great now. No, make it live, you know, but no, he read it.
You read it.
And is it a much different book than what he read originally, or is it?
I think it's a better book. Actually, now that you mention that, it was a really long time ago, so it's hard to remember, but when he read it, he just read the first part. And after that experience, I wrote a whole second part, which is much shorter in the finished book than it was. It was bigger than the first part. It was her modern, you know, it's in two parts. One's when she's young and one's when she's older. And the older part just went on and on and on, and I trimmed that way back. But, because it just was too much book. Yeah, he didn't know about it. And in fact, I tried to give him an out. I said, well, there's this other part I'm thinking about. And he said, no, that's not gonna help, you know? Anyone else have a question? Oh, another question. She started liking that.
Did the ending surprise you?
Did what?
The ending surprise you?
Kinda, yeah. Yeah. I did. And I tried to do a different ending and it didn't work. That was the ending it had to be.
Surprised me too.
Yeah,
Me too.
here. All of us.
yeah, yeah. Did. But I like to be surprised when I'm writing. I mean, for me, the thing that's fun about fiction is you're making something up, you know, you can do whatever you want. And oh, this could happen. What do you know, wouldn't that be odd? You know, and that's fun. It's fun to do. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming.
Anyone online, Kate?
Anyone?
Nothing.
No, they're in there.
That's a question.
Yeah, yes.
In regard to the ending. How did you?
Don't give it away if somebody else.
I've not read the book.
Yeah, some people have not read the book.
Maybe I don't hear that.
You may speak with me privately.
For those of you who are intrigued about that, are these for sale?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so there are a few copies up here if you are interested. Yes, oh, that's a question, I'm sorry.
This is a small question. The writer's retreat that you mentioned in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, was
Yeah.
that based on a real?
Yes,
place that
yes,
you-
it was. There's a place that I've been many times called Virginia Center for the Creative
Yes.
Arts.
Someone just suggested, yeah.
It's a
just mentioned it
wonderful,
to
it's
me
a, I
2 days
highly
ago.
recommend it. It's a wonderful place and very, I found it very fruitful. I went back many times. And it's a beautiful area for hiking or whatever. But, the one thing I went, this is the first time I've been to one, I've been to others since, but that one's special. And, the thing is, you're just surrounded by people doing stuff, you know, doing the same kind of, you're not weird there. You're just like, they're all weird, you know, it's nice. So I recommend it, yeah.
Thank you.
And can we look forward to another novel coming?
I hope so. I'm working on a couple of them, so, yeah.
Any other questions here or online?
So thank you again for coming.
Thank you.